Boker Tov, Chavirim. Good morning, everyone, all of my friends out there. It is time for Taste of Torah. And this is a Tuesday morning after an enormous storm, which, oddly enough, provides something for my object lesson related to our Torah portion. So here it is. There we go. This is the floor mat from my Honda Odyssey, which unfortunately, oh, wrong side. There we go. You've seen both sides now. This is my floor mat from my Honda Odyssey, which unfortunately got drenched last night. I left the window on the passenger side just a little bit open, but because it was such a driving rain, over 4 inches, Bob tells me, it turned out to be a huge amount of water, and a pretty fair amount of water got into my car. So this has been laying out in the sun to dry off. Why did I bother to do that? Because, of course, if I just left it and didn't try and dry it out, pretty soon I'd have mold. Which brings us to our Torah portion this week. Metzora. Metzora is an extension of what we've already been talking about, Tazria, in our previous Torah portion. In Tazria, we talked about skin diseases of humans, but we also talked about some kind of infectious material that grows on clothing that must be purged. And in Metzora, we continue the discussion. We discuss the idea that Sa'orah, some kind of surface contamination, can occur to houses as well. And most modern interpreters think we're talking about some kind of mold. In Texas, of course, we have the infamous black mold that can infect a house, and our ancestors dealt with that issue also. And so this, again, was a matter of some concern. So let me talk about a couple of big ideas from this, and then we'll zero in on what I want to talk about. Now, first of all, before we even get into that, I do want to mention that normally, under most years, Tazria Metzora is combined into a single Torah portion, but because we're in a Jewish leap year, they have been pulled out apart. They have been accordioned out so that we can fill in for the extra month we have this year. Always a whimsy in the way Jews read their texts. Of course, this isn't a problem for Christians. They have the solar calendar alone. This actually isn't a problem for Muslims because they went totally in on the lunar calendar. And a lunar year in Islam is the way you calculate years. They don't really base it on the seasonal experience that the sun creates on the earth for their calendar. So, and actually we're going to have it's going to be kind of a triple biorhythm high coming up. Not only will Pesach be happening, but we'll also, we're already in the holiday of Ramadan in the Islamic calendar. And of course, we always have Easter popping up just around the same time. So it's a triple celebration. So wish all of your neighbors a holy Easter, a Ramadan Mubarak is the proper way to say it. Mubarak is the same root for Baruch. Arabic and Hebrew are related to each other. So, so a blessed celebration of Ramadan, but also for us, we often talk about a Pesach Kodesh, a holy Pesach, or a beautiful Pesach. So all of those things are happening. But back to our topic. Okay, so Metzora, what are the big ideas that come out of it? Well, the first one is the interesting issue ritually. Whenever one experiences some kind of impurity, there's a ritual you have to undergo, at least in our biblical tradition. And that is true also for Tazria. the affliction of the skin, and it also applies to the affliction of a house. And the ritual involved here is that you have to make an offering, but it's a small offering. It reminds us that Judaism is for the poor as well as those who are more prosperous, that it recognizes that even if we're going to contribute, we can only contribute according to what we have, and it's not about forcing people to extend themselves to the limit or beyond the limit of their resources. All right. So, and then of course we have this strange thought that impurity or yuckiness or uncanniness or weirdness can affect our houses. And I'm sure you have a sense of that. When the integrity of our house is broken, we have a crack in the wall, or mold develops, or the carpets just won't clean properly, it bothers us. It's uncanny, and the same thing was true for our ancestors. So houses can develop illnesses, and metaphorically, because what are we but not the metaphoric readers, houses in the sense of institutions and families and larger gatherings of human beings, they can develop illnesses too. And those have to be addressed, and those have to be fixed. Um, Oversight over the things we have, the fact that we have to ask a priest to investigate, suggests that we have an obligation to pay attention to any kinds of pathology that infects our houses or our communal institutions or our institutions. All right. But I want to focus on something related to the priesthood, because actually I think it has good applicability in the age of social media. One of the things we see in this is the fact that priests in ancient Israel are not simply blessing dispensers. They're not simply someone you go to and ask them to perform a gesture, and they do it, and that allows you to relate to God. We see from the past two Torah portions, this Torah portion, the last one, that in fact priests are also diagnosticians, and priests also have a quasi-medical function. And so this reminds us that not every one of us has all the answers. Now, this is, I think, relevant to realize. So what happens is, if I were to quote what our Torah portion says, it says, Keneged nirei li babayit, which I can translate something like, something similar to a plague appears to me in my house. So there's a lot of, kind of, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Would you come and check it out? What the average Israelite doesn't do is assert that he knows what is or isn't happening. And so he calls upon an expert, the priest, to do that. And we in our culture are very empowered. We are well educated, and many of us, because we've attended university, have at least the modicum of the skill to do research on our own. And we gleefully do that, especially now that we have the internet, which gives us access to so much information. It's become a little harder for us to admit that we don't know it all. And as a result, there has arisen in our culture this idea of suspicion about experts. A doctor or an engineer or someone will tell us that something happened in a certain way, but somehow that's suspect, and we can't trust them. Usually because we think there's some kind of ulterior motives, or in the worst case, we think there's some kind of conspiracy. Our Torah portion reminds us that as much as well-informed as we are, as knowledgeable as we are, as often as we are called upon to offer our opinion, uh, there's a certain need for us to be humble, for us to recognize that we can't be an expert in every area, and that we sometimes have to defer to experts. Uh, I really can't tell you much about the budget at Congregation Kol Ami. I'm not an expert on spreadsheets or expenses or things like that. And so we rely on a treasurer, and at times we actually bring in an auditor to make sure that everything's on the up and up, that our house is not suffering from some kind of infection. And we rely on those experts to help us do that same thing. And if we do that there, maybe we should show a little more deference to experts in other areas. Maybe when engineering experts tell us that the World Trade Center steel melted under the effects of jet fuel, uh, it's probably not the right thing to claim, no, it had to be independent demolition. How many of us are demolition experts? Not many of us, but a lot of us seem to claim that the experts are wrong or deceiving us. Same thing goes when it comes to medical issues. We usually infer, no, we don't usually. Some people often infer some kind of malevolent intent when an expert tells us, A, we should do something, or B, we shouldn't do something. And especially if it is inconvenient or uncomfortable for us, we're going to research it ourselves and we're going to figure out why they're wrong. But I think maybe in our culture we've gone a little too far in our humility in the face of things that we aren't necessarily trained in. And so our Torah portion reminds us to be humble, not just in the way we relate to one another, but in our claims to expertise and knowledge. Well, that's my Torah portion for this week. And we're coming up on Pesach. It's on its way. It's very exciting. So I hope you'll join us for the community Seder. If you want to go to a first night Seder and you don't yet have a place to go, let me know. And I will do a little shidduch. I will bring together hosts and guests if you need it. And I look forward to celebrating with you all on this most sacred occasion, the time of our liberation. Boker Tov, everyone.